Good morning, audience, to the opening of this year DIH Talks hosted by the Luxemburg Digital Innovation Hub. I'd like to welcome you to the opening session today, together with my guest speakers, Jean-Christophe Witz from Husky and Daniel Lieberman from the Ministry of Economy. You're welcome. And I'm really quite excited to be your host today to moderate that session. And I'm quite confident that we will have two very interesting presentations from the two gentlemen. A little special thank I like to give to Jean-Christophe because he is joining at 5 o'clock from Canada, especially for this session. So that's certainly a nice commitment for our cooperation between Husky and the Digital Innovation Hub. So thank you, Jean-Christophe. Thank you, Daniel, already by now. To introduce myself, my name is Joe Clemens. For those that don't know me, I started at Lux Innovation, Digital Innovation Hub by last year in August. My background is basically ranging from business management. I have been head of IT for more than 10 years in international company. I started my career actually in the automation business with General Electric. That was actually also the company that brought me to Luxemburg. Last not least, I spent the last 3 years working for an SME here in Luxembourg, which has also shown me the specific challenges SME sector often has, particularly when it comes to the topic of digitalization, innovation, and Industry 4.0. Before we start, just a bit of housekeeping and how you can use this platform. First of all, quite important, this session is recorded and the replay will be available right afterwards, also for those that registered and could not make it for today, but it will also be placed in the Lux Innovation YouTube channel for a replay at any time as you want. Then for the tool, quite important, below on the right-hand side, you see the usual chat function, where you can chat with the entire audience, but you can also make it individual if you like to get in contact with somebody you see on the list of participants. Please place your questions in the questions section. When the two gentlemen are presenting, I will keep an eye on that section, and we will have about 3 minutes after each presentation for question and answers. In case there are more questions than time will allow, we will answer after this session separately. And for us, quite important, there is also a poll section, and there will be 2 polls today, quite simple ones. And let me just start my presentation, and which will show also the first poll that you find, and it's quite simple. Because we are a relatively new team here at Lux Innovation as the Digital Innovation Hub, and we have recurring people in those sessions. Our question to you is, do you know and do you clearly understand what our mission is all about? And it's quite simple. It's just yes or no. So if you could answer that, in the meanwhile, I will continue and indeed introduce again for those that don't know who we are. Basically, the Digital Innovation Hub, and this is also the hubbing part, is we are basically the middleman between all the different actors in the manufacturing sector here in Luxembourg and beyond for the greater region. And what we do is basically connect the SMEs, the larger players from the industry with the huge number of ICT providers that we have here in Luxembourg and beyond the borders, but also connecting you to R&D in the institution and other players. So we like to be your support organization when it comes to the matter of digitalization, Industry 4.0 topics. And we like, together with you, foster a good collaboration and to foster a network between all of us. And just today's session is already an example how we do that by informing, inspiring, by sharing experience with you to learn from the others, basically. And how we do that, I think that's not any different to also a commercial operation. First, we have to understand our ecosystem, we have to understand the clients, we have to understand the different ICT providers that we have in the market. So that's also some work, and it's published on our DIH.lu webpage, where you can find this overview, who are and how big is actually the manufacturing sector in Luxembourg. And you might find it already surprising because you see indeed more than 450 industrial companies or manufacturing companies in Luxembourg, and about a bit more than 250 providers as well, which is quite an impressive number, at least when this was finalized with our colleagues from the marketing intelligence department and the clusters, a number that was far higher than what we expected before we started this one. And one instrument of information and inspiration is certainly this year DIH Talks. In total, we have 8 episodes. And you're more than welcome to register, to listen and learn from those that went already ahead with the digitalization, with transformation, with innovation in that area. But you're also invited to share your experience, your success stories to the others, because one of the only ways to learn is to listen to others. And it's clear that we have companies that are already quite advanced, and we have companies that are following or just starting on their journey towards Industry 4.0 or digital transformation. Now, getting into the subject. Industry 4.0, or often called even as the forced revolution in manufacturing, I think it's a bit more than just a buzzword. It's about the increasing amount of digital solutions that we have. It's about data, connecting things together. You name them all. I think it's not something really new anymore. And many researchers are already targeting or talking about the fifth revolution in our ecosystems of manufacturing or smart factories of the future. And actually, I have to say, for me, it doesn't matter if you call it revolution or evolution. It is happening. And for me, simple driver behind all of that is actually that if we look backwards 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, on the one hand, we had the IT, which was more the back office IT, as I would call it, with ERP systems, with the computers, with the data center, and so on. And on the other hand, we had the production side. And those two worlds were completely separated. And that has dramatically changed. The technologies are becoming similar things. Those two worlds more and more get integrated. You need an integration usually between an ERP and the MES system, for example, things like that. And with all of that, we have more and more connectivity into the internet. Many companies went in full into the cloud or as a hybrid solution. And with that, it brings also a high need for cybersecurity, because you can indeed, or you should not, enter the Industry 4.0 technology stacks without improving also your cybersecurity level, because it could bring your production environment in danger. And there is a lot of talk about data and technology, certainly, But we should not forget we do that for a purpose. We need people to manage the change, and it is at the end done for the society, for the people. And if we add all that together, actually, then we generate valuable information. And that leads me really to the first speaker, which is Jean-Christophe Witz, and like to introduce him quickly. He is the CIO of Husky since many years. Husky, for those who don't know the company, it's a Canadian-based company. That's also why the reason why Jean-Christophe is right now connected from Canada. Husky is a leader in injection molding machines with 1.3 billion revenue globally. And Jean-Christophe is certainly one of the leading stars, I would say, here in Luxembourg that stand for digital innovation, transformation, Industry 4.0, because Husky actually started quite early to adopt those technologies and go after this change. And I'm looking forward now, Jean-Christophe, to listen to your presentation, and thank you very much. The floor is yours.
All right, so good morning, everyone.
Let me
So I'm going to share my presentation.
Yeah, just a moment. I have just to close mine. So
yeah,
now it's yours.
Everybody sees my screen?
Not now.
Sorry. Up. Okay, you see my screen here?
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. So good morning, everyone. So yeah, I wanted to share a little bit our vision and what we've done on our factory of the future. I could say right now, factories of the future. And as Jody mentioned, so we started the journey back in 2016 and really drive the charge of the transformation in 2018, where we started our roadmap of transformation. And I wanted to share this high-level roadmap because I think it's pretty interesting because it hasn't changed, but we have evolved quite a bit towards this transformation, where we really looked at our integration from end-to-end processes initially through the factories, and our first activities has been really to look at this vertical integration of all our end-to-end processes from sales to shipment. And it's where we started with our factory of the future. And then while we've seen that and we've done that, so what is a little bit unique with Husky is that we have most of the end-to-end processes and technology, meaning that we are selling as well our solution, and we are servicing, and we have a very large supply chain. So while we were thinking about digitizing our factories end-to-end within our core vertical integration, I think it appeared very quick that it was required as well to do horizontal integration. And when I'm speaking about horizontal integration, is really looking at our e-commerce side, and as well integrating our supply chain to our factories in order to enable the data flow. As well, we have an overarching support to our technology. So meaning that when we are selling our components, it's also very important that we service them properly. And what we realized is that by starting to bundle and connect our data from an end-to-end perspective, we had also the unique opportunity to provide, through the technology that we started to implement, digital services and IoT solution to connect worldwide our technology and solution to our cloud ecosystem. And this is where we are right now. So basically, we moved already the 3 layers from vertical, horizontal, and now starting to provide digital services. And then what we starting to work on is what we'll call product digitalization. So meaning that we become a software company, as well, providing products that are entirely connected to our systems. And we are part now as well from an IT perspective of the product development of the company, while companies in the past were leveraging technologies, selling products, selling goods. Right now, our strategy is really to connect those goods that we are producing also to digital services associated to that. And this is really the path forward of the state where we are. So basically, this vision has been from the beginning, pretty consistent. And luckily, we've been, investing quite a bit at Husky in order to move towards this digitalization roadmap. And, obviously, while we learn a lot with our factory of the future, I think what quickly we realized is that we had an opportunity to grow furthermore. So the way that we've been doing this overall and overarching transformation, I think is really architecting the transformation in order to ensure that we have foundational elements basically to support this digital transformation. And the foundational elements we see are the cross-functional elements that are really critical in order to support it. So meaning that there's one which is the customer experience, or and the customer can be internal or external experience. So making sure that we have an overarching transformation for people in order to support this journey. The two second piece are more the technical side of the house, where, as Joe did mention, so when we started this journey, so we're talking about Industry 4.0, and this is a data-driven type of transformation. And right from the beginning, we started our journey to think about modernizing our data platform and our data approach in order to enable this transformation. And as Joe did mention, so while basically the companies were focusing on ERP system and data in a siloed environment, what we appeared to make this successful was really to connect our data from an end-to-end perspective and to look at it across the silos. The other piece, obviously, from a technology standpoint, so it's embedding a lot of newer technologies, and these newer technologies obviously are pretty critical, and we need, from an IT perspective, to transform the way that we operate. So, for example, agile transformation, cloud services, cloud solution, cybersecurity, where we invested largely as well to ensure that through this transformation, we are not going to create more threats. And, as well, looking at how we deliver capabilities towards the business, driving towards product delivery rather than project. Because when we start Factory of the Future, the experience that we have is that we never stop. Is a continuously evolution of those technologies. So that means that it's not a one-off, and we are creating teams that are going to be sustaining across the many years of the transformation. And then we separated in three buckets of transformation in order to ease the process, where we looked more at the e-commerce and basically the multi-channel transformation to reach out to customers, looking at our next generation operating model that was, in light of our Factory of the Future from an end-to-end perspective. And we started to look at, as well, at our service transformation, all that based on foundational capability of data that initially provide KPI analytics and advanced analytics, but are as well enabling for the future machine learning, artificial intelligence. We took it simple, so we didn't want to start right from the bat with machine learning and artificial intelligence, but rather build the foundational element from a technology standpoint, but as well from a data awareness point of view. So when we're thinking about our digital platform, basically, so what I think we add is what is our target architecture, and the way that we looked at that is really to look at it in a simplified manner. And this is just to explain the way that we approach it. Our target architecture that you see more in the center is really the one that is going to connect to the various ecosystem that we have been looking at. So what you see on the right side is really connecting to our customers. On the upper side, connecting to the factories of the customers, so meaning that we also transform our customers towards more factories of the future. And the same on the bottom is our own factory of the future that enable basically a seamless operation. And lastly, obviously, when we're thinking about factory of the futures, specifically if, like us, you need as well a very large supply chain element. So how we connect basically the supply chain element to the core business processes, basically in order to enable a seamless operation. So the way also that it has been pretty critical is to ensure that this ecosystem is entirely secured. So it's a lot of entry points. When we started this journey, and Joe alluded to that as well, is that a lot of people, or teams were more focused on the ERP system, on-premise technologies. And believe me or not, cloud was not an option to start with because of the cybersecurity concern, but as well from the data loss prevention. But making proof of concept, learning better about this technology helped us to learn, to understand, to approach it from a step approach that enabled us to scale it much faster. So our transformation journey, as we said, we started small, where we started with really proof of concept back in 2016. We started to validate within a year that our factories were working, and then later on we started the scale exercise in order to grow to the various activities that you saw just before. And really right now we are on the end stage of this first initial transformation that basically already put all the foundational elements. And really the future for us is to start to build also some technologies to support directly our equipments that we're selling. Data as a core, and I think again, when we are talking about industry 4.0, the core element is really around the data and how we make sure that all this data as a cohesive way to be ingested and basically used for the various use cases that we have been looking at. And we call it on our side, our data 2.0 is really turning the life cycle of the data into information assets. Data is really an element that needed specific attention in order to ensure that from a use case point of view, the technology, but as well the people and the skills are transformed in order to be able to leverage as quick as possible this information and enable the scalability of the technologies that we are bringing from a digital transformation point of view, and have more plug and play kind of solution and quick availability of this information rather than re-architecting all the time this data in order to get the value out of that. So basically, it has been also a competing technology enablement that we've been looking at from that standpoint. When we are thinking about our factory of the future, I think one key core element, and we never speak enough about that, but most of the value, and we need to think about a value-driven approach when we are speaking of factories of the future, is thinking about more an end-to-end process rather than a silo improvement. A lot of people, when they're thinking about it, they're going to say, yeah, I want to do predictive analytics on my equipment, or I want to do a better operation efficiency. But I think what we've been realizing is that the biggest opportunity is really when you were thinking about end-to-end effectiveness rather than a specific area. And really what we've been looking at, and when we're thinking about factories, is an approach where we are thinking it from more blueprint exercise, meaning that we are planning, we are elaborating virtual models. These virtual models are being produced, and what is really critical through the data backbone that we have is to ensure that we recapture the information and continuously improve our virtual models through the information that is captured in order to enable the end quality. And that can be manufacturing, that can be lead time, that can be performance, but really the core element is to ensure that we create this continuous learning factory that over the time keep improving the virtual models that are the start of creation of the capabilities for the customers. And lastly, and Joe, I don't see you, so you'll have to speak when the time is over, how much is left. But basically, lastly, when we're thinking about the digital services and how we transform better the way that we operate and leverage the cloud technologies and solutions and learning from our internal factory, how we provide some digital services is really around basically connecting our technologies from an end-to-end perspective, leveraging these technologies because we've been learning them into our own ecosystem, and basically scaling that. And really one of the example on how once we've been learning, we've been able to scale the technologies furthermore is that over the course of last year, basically we've been starting to provide digital services to our customers, and right now we are really on the scaling. And as you see the dot that you see on the world map, basically has been creating these IoT services where we connect our customers to our cloud ecosystem that provide this entire services from our central monitoring center where our own people are able to monitor the factories, not only of our internal factories but also the factories of our customers centrally. So basically the message here is really when we go that route, it's really also the opportunity to scale fast to other capabilities and have the ability to leverage these technologies for further use cases. And in our case, obviously, digital services is one of the key core elements that we thought will be a great value for our customers in order to have them more predictive and reactive capabilities in order to operate in a much better environment. So that's, I think, overall the couple of slides that I wanted to share around our journey. And really key core message is that starting right, learning through some use cases is critical, but if the technology capabilities and specifically around the data are done right, so that's also an enablement to move down the road through a much larger transformation of factories of the future based on data analytics. And this is an example where how from an internal capabilities we can scale to more an external support to enable the factories of future of our customers.
Okay.
All right.
Jean-Christophe, thank you very much. And as expected, and first of all, a big compliment to the journey Husky under your leadership went already. It's really quite interesting and impressive to see that. And as expected, we have a few questions, and we have also a bit of time maybe to answer one or two out of them. I would like to start with a question from Andreas Kern, who was wondering about how you were able in that ecosystem to manage the data quality. And the question is, did you have a specific data management strategy behind all of that?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. So because very often data quality is a very big concern, and obviously the part of the data 2.0 is really to start to embrace data governance. While most of the companies, when they are scaling data, they are not looking really at the governance, and identifying the right stakeholders around the data. So what we've been doing is starting our journey with as well looking at data governance, and to ensure that we identify through the journey each time that we were going through a specific value, establishing the data owners and ensuring that we have a competing approach from a data governance point of view. it's a very big change for most of the companies because it's a pretty large investment when we're thinking about data governance, and it can be extremely overwhelming very fast because obviously that's a lot of rework for some of the data elements, and that requires as well basically a good working together with the businesses. And specifically, I could give an example. When we thought about operation effectiveness, everyone had a very specific definition of what operation effectiveness was, meaning that one production side said this is the way that I'm doing production effectiveness, was the other one was saying that's the way. And basically, we had to work quite a bit with our business stakeholders in order to have a single, definition that we would basically, put in this element, and then govern this operation effectiveness definition the proper manner, that no one is confused anymore about what this means and what are the data elements that are required in order to do that. But it's a pretty challenging element, and that's the way that we been approaching this from a data quality standpoint. One of the elements, obviously there's others, but this has been a quite interesting one in order to enable a single source of truth, and as well a single way of thinking about an outcome and a data.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. We have 1 minute or 2 minutes left for one last question. Unfortunately, we will not be able to answer all of them, but that's unfortunately also a difficult one because several participants asked the question, how did you handle the cybersecurity part, particularly knowing that you have even connected the machines at your customer side?
Yeah. So cybersecurity is on top of my mind. I multiply by 4 the team. So and we invested heavily on technology and knowledge and support around the cybersecurity right from the start. And basically, we really started our journey around cybersecurity by doing an holistic assessment of our capabilities in order to go the journey. Meaning that we had, and we've been luckily supported by our shareholders in the United States that, provided us, a great, company that helped us to do a deep dive on our practices and our understanding around cybersecurity. And since, 3 years and a half, so we have established a roadmap of cybersecurity, basically in order to bring, practices, culture of security, but as well technologies in order to support that. And it's continuously efforts. So we have also it was not part of the view of the executive. So we created as well a steer committee of cybersecurity with our executive team, and we are meeting regularly in a quarterly basis to show the progress and basically continuously look at basically threats, but as well practices that we need to apply. One of the key core elements when we're thinking about cybersecurity, obviously for manufacturing space, and I think everyone on the call would be concerned about this one, is that most of the threats, and we know that most of the threats that we see today for the companies are coming from the OT space, because OT space is an unmanaged space. So most of the companies, while basically they developed a very good practice on the IT space, where your laptops cannot get on USB and so on, we haven't done the same exercise for most of the companies in the OT space, where most of the late manufacturing machine are based as well on Microsoft, some of them. And basically they have also issues of holes in they need to be patched eventually, or most of them cannot be patched. So that means that based on this understanding as well, what we've created is an IT OT on top of the Cybersecurity Council. We created an IT OT Cybersecurity Council, basically in order to bring the practices of cybersecurity as quick as possible within the OT space, because that's one of the major threats that is extremely critical, not only around the technology, but as well on practice. How we make sure that when we buy an equipment, manufacturing equipment, when we plug, a coffee machine in a network, that's not going to pull apart the entire ecosystem. So that has been, a very, still, heavy investment for the team. As I said, it's a very large investment that we've done from the start, and complementing the team with the skills outside initially, but as well, augmenting the team from the inside, and getting the right level of attention from the executive and the right level of investment in order to ensure that this is done well.
Okay, Jean-Christophe, thank you very much for that long answer. But as said, it was also a simple question, as we both agree, I think. And I think we have to stop here, unfortunately. So a few questions will not be answered. Jean-Christophe, thank you very much again for joining us from Canada today. We really appreciate that. Have a great day and don't suffer too much under the jet lag, and safe trip. Thank you very much.
I will take my breakfast now. Okay.
Bye for now. Bye. Thanks again. Okay, we will continue our the second half of our session with the second poll. Because that's also quite an important initiative by us in cooperation with the FEDIL here in Luxembourg. We have just launched the Digitalization and Industry 4.0 survey, and we are simply interested to hear if those that are listening today, are you aware of it? And please give your answer in the poll section, please. And by the way, the answers on the first question, if the DIH mission is known or not known, 60% rated answered with a yes, 40% with a no, which is a clear sign for us that we still have to work on making us known, making us understood in regards to our mission here in Luxembourg. Now, this is the survey, also the link where you can find it. Again, all of what we discuss here you find on dih.lu. And what is the purpose of this survey? It's again, knowing your sector, understand your clients, trying to understand your challenges. So it is in order to secure a success of that survey, it will be enormously important that your companies are participating and providing answers, because this will give us a quite solid picture of where the industry in Luxembourg or the manufacturing sector in Luxembourg is standing today, where are the problems, and most important, how we, with the ecosystem behind us, can support you. So we really like to encourage you to go for this survey, and thanks in advance for providing your feedback as part of it. Now, I'd like to introduce Daniel Lieberman. Daniel Lieberman joined the Ministry of Economy in 2014 already. And right from the beginning, Daniel had a strong focus on accessing the Luxembourgish competitiveness on the one hand, and he became very much involved in the economic development policy for Luxembourg. In 21, Daniel became Director of Supply Chain and Industry 4.0, and basically his main tasks are develop the supply chain and logistics sector towards green and digital transitions, as well as develop a strategy for the Luxembourg manufacturing industry by 2014. Daniel holds a degree in economics, a Master of Science in Finance, as well as a Master of Arts in European Interdisciplinary Studies. Daniel, welcome to the session, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Joachim. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be able to present you the work that we are currently doing, and it's work in progress. Let me first put the presentation in order to share it. Voila. So, as you mentioned, one of my main tasks at the Ministry of the Economy is to define a strategy for Luxembourg manufacturing industry by 2040. it's important to underline, and I think Jean-Christophe also presentation, and also through all the project he explains with Husky, digital transformation of the manufacturing industry is already an ongoing process in Luxembourg. However, through the pandemic, it has gained a higher priority on everybody's agenda, especially at the EU level. And that's why we also now want to look also and further push Luxembourg strategy towards further developing, helping the existing companies to acquire, to diffuse new technologies into their operations, as well as sustainable solutions. The starting point of these elements is that last October, the High Committee for Industry, which is High Committee which is presided by the Minister of the Economy, with the FEDIL and members of manufacturing company here in Luxembourg. So following the context of the pandemic, the crisis, supply chain disruptions, they came together and they agreed that actions need to be taken and structured around 4 selected teams. One thematic is the industry and climate, which is basically looking towards how to help manufacturers in Luxembourg to decarbonize their activities. A second group or thematic is towards circular business models in industry. So it's look how to diffuse the circularity into industrial activities. A third one is to how to manage the economic activity zones here in Luxembourg. And the third one, which concerns myself, is also a group that I co-presiding with another colleague, Marco Valentini. So this is the Luxembourg manufacturing industry by 2040. So each of these working groups have been set up in order to address the thematics, first to deepen the discussions, but also to define clear recommendations in order to define action plans around the 4 thematics. In relation to the Factory of the Future working group of the High Committee for Industry, there's a clear objective. The objective is to define and implement a strategy for Luxembourg manufacturing industry by 2040. In order to do that, first we defined a framework paper, what industrial fabric for Luxembourg for 2040, in order to structure our discussions. And today we are in a process of finalizing the tender specification in order to commission a study related to this strategy. The working group, we also have the responsibility to validate the interim and the final report. This final report will also report to the High Committee for Industry in order to make some clear recommendations that will afterwards be translated into a clear action plan. So the starting point of our thoughts was the supply chain disruption caused by the pandemics. Actually, it reveals how dependent the European economy was towards a number of third countries. There was many shortages of supplies at different levels, be it worker level, material level, and so on. However, it also recalled the importance for an economy to have an industrial fabric. And this is really important, although it was already ongoing before the crisis, is really was a recall at the highest level, also at the European level, the importance to reindustrialize the European manufacturing tissue. At that level, there are many initiatives running. The idea is not to reshore all the activities. The idea is actually to strengthen a number of key manufacturing activities in Europe, and also try to identify where are the segments with high value creations for future activities. And in this context, Industry 4.0 and decarbonation are notably seen as two major levers to boost the European manufacturing activities. As Jean-Christophe already presented, Industry 4.0 is a paradigm shift for industry activities. However, it doesn't mark the end of industrial activities. It's also the emergence of a new form of organizations, first internally, so all technologies, all enabling technologies around data, but not only robotics, additive manufacturing. So they will reshape every process along a product value chain. However, they will also rechain how all the actors into an ecosystem will interact. Data needs to be shared. The value chain is also becoming more and more consumer centric, so consumers are more be taken into account. And next to this, also very important, it's all the decarbonation aspect, which also needs to be taken into account. Many initiatives have already been taken. However, as you know, there are ambition goals being set for 2030 and 2050 in order to further reduce the CO2 footprint of the manufacturing industry. And so there will be one working group, as I mentioned, will be looking into how to help companies to decarbonize, for example, by electrifications of the process, by using renewable energies and including hydrogen. The idea here is to go even beyond that from our side in order to see how can we go further in order to, from the start, insert the eco design into products and so on. The whole idea is that factory of the futures, first, before implementing them in Luxembourg, we need to understand all the models or the configuration possible. We understand that in the future, there is not one size fits all. There will be different configurations depending on volume production. I think mega plants will still exist. They will be smart, they will be digitalized, they will be using many new key enabling technologies in order to produce products. However, on the other side, as I mentioned, consumers are becoming more and more involved into the process in order where their specifications are taken into account, or for example, in co-creation of products. And this will also give the emergence of new customer-centric plans, more taking into account these customizations from needs and from the customers, and to produce in smaller series. However, also with the same productivity as producing at a higher scale. Next to that, we also understand there will be also emergence of new business models, and we also need to understand these new business models that will emerge from the factories of the futures. And finally, the landscape that we know today with the actors, we also know that it's changing. I think the existing manufacturers, I think they are transforming already, but new factory of the futures will come. And as the Ministry of the Economy has also this task to attract new actors, We also would like in the future to attract new factory of the futures, but we need to understand how they will look like, what are the needs. There will be also new Industry 4.0 technology providers, as well as startups. All this needs to be well understood and organized in order to facilitate their deployment in Luxembourg. However, before defining a strategy for Luxembourg, we first of all need to take into account all the forces that are shaping tomorrow's framework, be it the mega trends at the global level, be it the demographic change, the globalization revisited, the shift in global economic powers, climate change, resource scarcity. And for Luxembourg, we also need to take into account what is happening at the European level. As I mentioned, through the pandemic, although it was already an ongoing process to have a new industry strategy, I think there has been an acceleration and reindustrialization of activities, and Europe has become now high on the Commission agenda. And many initiatives are taken today, and we need to understand them in order to take the most benefits out of it. I think there's the legal and regulatory initiatives that we need to take into account, as well as the EU strategic value chains and the open strategic autonomy also, which is important to take into account. So the idea in defining a strategy, so first we need to understand the big picture, the global trends, what's happening at the EU level. Based on that and based on the specifications of Luxembourg, small economy, open, limited land, limited access to resources, as well as the growth ambitions that we want to have a sustainable development, to take the impact on the environment and a continued economic growth. All this needs to take into account, and understanding how the factory of the futures look like, to understand what are the best fit for Luxembourg, how to facilitate the diffusion of key technologies and green solutions in Luxembourg. And finally, also, when I mentioned we need to understand what's happening at the EU level, I think there are many initiatives in order to set up, to implement EU strategic value chains. The idea is not to have all the activities in Luxembourg, but to understand a product value chain, to understand where might be the best fit for Luxembourg, understand where technology will also impact all these different value chain processes, and try to position Luxembourg on certain aspects of high value creation segments. That's one idea behind. And once we have defined a vision for Luxembourg within this working group, the idea afterwards is to define a roadmap with concrete actionable measures. So I'm not able to give you really much details, because we are in a process in launching a European tender for commissioning studies. So we need to first finalize this tender, but our purpose is to launch it in the coming weeks. And the idea of in this tender is that the expert who will be awarded or selected for the study will need to come up with recommendations for creating an enabling environment for the future of manufacturing landscape around all the constituent elements. We have already some in Luxembourg. I think there are many initiatives. I think the DIH is one of them. We have the high-performance computer. We have already different elements, but we need to have a forward-looking strategy and continue to define a strategy in order to create this environment to enable the diffusion of key technologies and sustainable solutions, to facilitate the deployment of new business models, as well as to attract new players of the factory of the futures. So that was it from my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Very interesting, and clearly indicates the strong interest of the ministry on the manufacturing sector, and also to remind everybody that we from the DIH as well as Lux Innovation are one of the facilitators to support you in the industry to make it happen and to go after the digital transformation. Daniel, I received one question that's regarding if there are any specific sectors when it comes to manufacturing where the ministry likes to push on. For example, would it be health, would it be mobility, something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe you can answer that one.
Very good questions. I think there was also a discussion in the working group. Actually, Luxembourg has already a strategy, and it has a strategy around data-driven innovation strategy, where we have already defined a number of sectors. We have defined the health tech sector, the clean tech sector, space, and others. The idea of this strategy is not to define a new sector of activity. Here, it's the activity we're taking is the manufacturing industry, which is quite heterogeneous. So there's no one size fits all. That's why we want to understand the key enabling technologies where Luxembourg could position itself to gain also some know-how, maybe also some technologies that can be horizontal use for others. So the idea here is more to look around technologies and factories models in a broader scope than to define a new sector actually of activities. Because the idea, we have already initiatives, and the idea is to further push them and to further leverage on these activities.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel, and thanks for sharing all those insights of what is planned from a ministerial side. Thanks again for joining today, and we will get in a few minutes close to the end of this session. Let me just share one other slide to remind everybody the next DIH talk is scheduled for May 20. On that day, we will try to have interesting speakers and sharing information on energy efficiency, which is at the moment, due to the unfortunate Ukraine crisis, a big topic in the industry because most companies are really confronted with high energy cost. So I'm looking forward to this session, and we also hope to have interesting speaker next time. Thank you very much for joining today. Thank you, Daniel, again. Thank you, Jean-Christophe, again, for participating and sharing your information to the audience.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.